It is the time and place for the November meeting of the Boise Airport Commission. I call the meeting to order. May I have roll call?
I'm here.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Cunningham. Here. Commissioner Bowen. Here. Commissioner Morales. Here. Commissioner Vasquez. Here. Commissioner Westerberg. Here. Chairman Westergaard.
Here. Okay, we will move into approval of the minutes. You have before us the minutes from the October 2nd, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion? Or, sorry, first I should say, are there any corrections?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
having read the minutes, I think they're very accurate. I would move for their approval.
Right, a second?
Second.
Hi for a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes, motion carries. Looks like, our item number 3, there's no unfinished business, so we'll move right into the airport director report from Director Huff.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you all for being here, members of the commission and airport stakeholders. Appreciate that. As you can see, we did move to the bigger Boise River room. These meetings seem to be more and more popular, and so hopefully this room will work out well to have multiple people be able to attend. I will go ahead and jump right into my update report. Assuming that I can get my slide to advance. So I'm going to start off with an update on some of the construction that we're seeing at the airport. You can see that the rental car facility is actually coming out of the ground. We have the footings placed for the ready return service area and the customer service area. So that is going according to schedule. And we're excited to see that continuing. Not nearly as exciting or probably as visible, but also incredibly important. We do have a new electric boiler that we have installed. It replaced a couple of older boilers that were reaching the end of their useful life. With utility and electricity costs being amongst the lowest in the nation here, we are transitioning to electricity for this boiler. It will also support Concourse A. And it was partially funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Act. So we did receive some grant funding for that as well. On the airfield side, again, maybe not as visible to the traveling public, but certainly visible to those of you who fly privately, and certainly has an impact. Taxiway Delta, relocation of the ARF access road, that's the aircraft rescue and firefighting access road. We are expecting substantial completion on this on November 15th. So just a little over a week away. So that will be coming soon. We're also moving forward with Taxi Lane November. This is the taxiway that leads to the new area that we are developing for private hangar development, corporate hangar development. It will provide additional access to the airfield. This is over by, if you're familiar with it from the land side, over by where House of Hounds is. And we are continuing forward progress on our planning for the concourse development. We do have the Fentress architectural firm online. We're working on the forecast. The existing forecast that we did with the master plan is outdated, as many of you may remember. It's outdated probably about 2 years after we did it. So we are developing a new forecast that will help inform what the size of the new concourse will be. We also have selected an owner's representative. This will be Jacobs Project Management. They will help help guide us through the process and help us be the facilitation between the design and the engineering firm, and is the construction manager at risk, which is the next thing that we'll be doing an RFQ for. This will be the actual company that's doing the building. And we often refer to it as construction manager at risk. Here in Idaho, we refer to it as construction manager general contractor. We're expecting that this RFQ will go out in early 2025, so we can have that firm on board early in the design process so we can get the maximum benefit from their input on the constructability of the project. And an update on our concessions remodel. As you remember, we selected and renewed contracts for our concessions, both with the food and beverage and the retail and gift. We did a full request for proposals. We received many qualified proposals, but the best proposals happened to be from our incumbents. So we will have Delaware North continuing providing food and beverage, and we will continue to have Parodies LaGuardiere provide the retail and gift. We are planning a ceremonial groundbreaking for this after our next airport commission meeting on December 4th. So it will be an opportunity to showcase the new concepts that will be coming into the terminal. And they will have a period of time to bring all of the projects to fruition. But I believe the first wave of new developments will be on board in late spring, early summer of 25 will be the first wave of it, the new concessions. And I just mentioned the master plan that was adopted in 2019 and that the forecasts were outdated. It is time to update the master plan. That is our 20-year look at facilities and infrastructure and what the airport needs. And we will be updating that. The last master plan, a lot of the things that it called for, things like expanding the checkpoint, new parking garages, the consolidated rental car facility. Many of those things are things that we have already done. And so we'll be looking at what is appropriate in the next 20-year planning horizon. So we have issued an RFQ, and those will be due November 13th. There will be a role for airport commission, airport stakeholders. For those of you who've been through the process before, you may remember there are several different stakeholder committees that look at the airport from various perspectives for what's needed for facilities and infrastructure. So we'll have the commission input, we'll have input from our airline stakeholders, we'll have input from general aviation stakeholders, input from elected leaders, commission. So there'll be a variety of opportunities for input as we go through this process. But that RFQ is due in the middle of November. We did receive some good news as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Boise was awarded a $9 million grant that is designated for new aircraft passenger boarding bridges. I believe there were over 870 applications. And so we were really excited to have this additional funding. Everything that we can pay for with grant is one less thing that we have to pay for out of airport revenue. So it helps us to come closer to making that a reality. Do want to highlight that we have relocated a cell phone waiting area from the lane where it was blocking traffic and causing congestion to over by the cell phone or over by the economy lot. The advertising program for that is going well. We are waiting on some permits from ACHD for some additional signage, so that will be coming hopefully later this week. But the timing of the travel from the economy lot to the terminal does seem to be working well. And we think it'll continue to improve with increased and improved signage. Again, probably not as exciting to some people, but really exciting to me. Fitch maintained our rating for our bonds. The outlook is stable. And I think this just is a testament to the growth that we're seeing, the stability, and the conservative financial approach that we've taken at the airport. I'm happy to get you copies of these slides so you can brag about our A+ rating if you would like. That would be fine. I did want to touch on backcountry operations for next season. I know we've been receiving a number of questions about it, and so I expect that you may receive questions about it as well. For those of you who maybe are not as familiar with the terminology that we use here, the backcountry operators are the general aviation operators who are bringing Passengers to the backcountry, exactly as that would sound, they go through what we call gate 58. It's not a super creative name, but it's actually the number on the gate that they use. It's adjacent to the terminal. You can see it highlighted there. You can also see what is the old aircraft rescue and firefighting station in that depiction, as well as the cars and vehicles that are parked there. That is the area that is designated for a new concourse expansion in the last master plan. This old fire station will be going away. And during that time, we will have to relocate the backcountry operators. And we had notified them of this, I think, as early as 2020, possibly even 2019, that this was coming. The day is here. We need to actually demolish that so we can start construction on the aircraft parking apron. And, there's no final plans made for what is coming next. That will be decided as we move through the master plan process and also the terminal design process. So we have a couple of projects that are coming up that will inform that, but we do know that this year, they will have to relocate. We also participated in a pilot outreach event with the FAA. Thank you to Marcus Green for sharing information about our construction projects and things that are happening. This is becoming an annual event that we are working with Idaho Department of Aero to host or to attend. Want to highlight a couple of promotions on our team. Again, there are lots of people who work behind the scenes to make things run smoothly. And, if you've ever arrived someplace and not had your luggage arrive at the same time, you know how important these positions are. So we have John Bollinger, who is going to be promoted to our maintenance mechanic lead on our baggage handling system. And also Mark Viticolona, he is being promoted to our supervisor on the midnight shift. This is a 24/7 operation, and these are very important times of the day for facilities, improvements in infrastructure. And it's really a busy time with passengers even arriving into the night. Also want to give a shout out to Parodies. They were recognized by Idaho, and By Idaho is a group that promotes products that are made in Idaho, and they were recognized for their partnership. So congratulations to Parodies and also specifically to Tara and her entire team for that. Switching gears a little bit, want to talk about September enplanements and passenger travel. We continue to see strong growth year over year. You can see September enplanements were up 4% compared to the previous year. And year-to-date passengers are also up 4%. We obviously do not have the numbers for October yet, but it is likely that we will see an increase in October as well as what we're projecting. And I have some more air service slides. We have our quarterly air service report following these slides, so I'll share a little bit more about what we're expecting in terms of air service and how we're performing. These are the top 10 operating and revenue descriptions. This is as of the end of, it's not the end of September because that's year end. Or I'm looking at, anyway. These are our fiscal year. This is not quite the year end. We'll have one more, we have some adjustments to make before we have the final year end numbers, but you can see revenue continues to be up substantially. There's nothing new that we haven't already talked about, probably at least 6 times here in this meeting. It has to do with a number of things, renegotiated agreements, increases in passenger readjustments on the rideshare agreements, and just a variety of things that we've talked about. Same thing on the personnel side. Many of the increases are things that we've talked about, including renegotiated police and fire services. And also I would note that parking management, despite having more people parking, our parking management fee is lower. And that's because the company that we hired is doing a better job of managing costs. So that's a win-win.
Rebecca, what's the driver under others
Under other,
plus 171%?
I would have to go back and look that up, Bill. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, there's just a mix of things under other. I mean, these are our top 10 and under other is everything else. So I can get you some more information on that.
Thank you.
Back to air service for a minute. Our top origin and destination markets, I would note that we have nonstop service to 19 out of 20 of our nonstop destinations. We're seeing that passenger travel is continuing to increase. Obviously Orlando with the announcement of nonstop service to Orlando has increased the largest percentage. And our load factor actually increased 1 point. We've seen capacity increase as well as passengers. Passengers are increasing slightly faster than capacity. And so therefore load factor has gone up 1 point. Market share remains very competitive. You may remember when we've looked at this before, Southwest and Alaska are vying to be our market share leader. And with additions that Southwest has put into the market, with increased frequencies and larger aircraft, they have edged Alaska out by a hair, even though Alaska has also added substantially to our market. Delta continues to be a strong player, followed by United. American has remained constant. And then the other carriers, Allegiant, Spirit, Avelo, all make up a much smaller percentage of our market share. This is the schedule that I think is always most informative to us as we plan for the future. It's the forward-looking seats and the forward-looking schedule. This is what the airlines are intending to fly. This is what's for sale in their schedules today. And you can see November is relatively flat, but December sees a substantial increase, as does January through April of next year. And we may see those numbers be adjusted as those dates get closer, but as of right now, we are anticipating, particularly we're not going to see substantial changes close in December, January, February. And I think that's, those flights are already booking. So we can expect to continue to see healthy growth as we move forward. Want to note and remind you that when we are talking about slides, we did discuss the potential of adjusting our comparison cities again. You may remember we had started with one set of comparison cities. We quickly outgrew that set of comparison cities, so we changed them. And we've outgrown those comparison cities as well. So we dropped Des Moines, Tulsa, and Grand Rapids because they're not quite, they're not experiencing the growth that we are, and they're not really great comparisons anymore. We did keep Reno, Spokane, Colorado Springs, Charleston, El Paso, Tucson, and Oklahoma, and Providence. We added Albuquerque, Hartford, Richmond, Milwaukee, Columbus, and Cincinnati. Several of those are significantly larger than Boise, but as we are going through this growth period and we're looking for best in class and aspirational airports, we thought it was good to modify and include some larger airports in our mix. So with that said, our seats per capita, we're at about 3.44. It's the highest, fifth highest based on all of the new comparison markets. So when we were comparing ourselves to smaller markets, obviously we've compared more favorably, but our goal was to kind of be in the middle of the pack. And then looking at our airfare comparison, again, we were 8th in this peer group of passengers. And we had the highest average, or one of the highest average domestic fares. Looking at the year over year comparison, we did not see the growth that some of the other airports in this peer group saw. I think that's in large part because we had a very slow and flat first 6 months of the year, combined with the fact that we saw substantial growth in 22 and 23. So, and I think many of these airports were still recovering from the pandemic in 22 and 23, where we had fully recovered from the pandemic at that time. So that concludes my report. I do have one other item that I want to mention for commission that maybe you want to discuss in your comments. And we're looking ahead to 2025. It seems like it's a long way away, but there's only one commission meeting between us and 2025. And the first Wednesday of the new year is January 1st, which is when we normally meet. So the question I will pose to commission is if you would like to cancel the January commission meeting. I don't foresee anything pressing at that time, but I will leave it to you to address in commissioner comments. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question for Director Hall. Director, can you just elaborate on the relationship with Jacobs and specifically, is it customary to hire an owner's rep for projects like these? And then secondly, if you could just talk about how they're compensated. I'm not looking for details, but are they incentivized based on the project schedule, the project budget? I was just curious about that relationship.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, because I probably should have mentioned it. And Beth is here, so she can chime in if I forget any key points. But yes, it is a industry best practice to hire an owner's rep for these types of situations, and they will help us with things that are maybe not engineering related. So for example, making decisions about whether or not we want to use common use technology on all of the aircraft parking gates, so that way any airline can use it, or whether we want to allow their airline specific equipment at each gate. And how do we allocate new gates in the new concourse? So things that are more business related than engineering related, but they also will provide input if there's maybe a disagreement between the architect and the construction company. So they will provide guidance on bonding and funding sources, and they really bring a technical expertise from the business and planning perspective. And so we did a request for qualifications. So their selection was based on their qualifications, not based on price, but they have provided us a price for each of the representatives who will be working on the team, and then they will bill us based on how we're using them. So if they will only bill us for work that is done. So if we have something specific that comes up related to the project, we will engage their expertise. And one of the reasons we selected Jacobs is because they do have a very broad team with broad expertise. So financial modeling was incredibly important as part of the selection, as well as experience working on other projects and at other airports. So they came highly recommended.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Yeah, I wanted to ask, you had mentioned ACHD signage. Have we already run out any opportunities for ITD, for at least coming from the west signage, going into the orchard exit there?
So we are gonna have signage with ITD too, and I'm looking at Sean, he was here. Of course he did.
I can answer some of that. I did actually talk with him last week about it. And yes, he has reached out to ITD to get the signage set up. Obviously, that's a long process, but there should be one on the highway going both directions. And then as you get off of the exit, there should also be another one on Orchard that'll give you instructions on where to turn on Victory.
And we have some billboards as well. Yes.
Yes, so we do have ITD signage in process. I don't know the exact status of it, but we did also do digital advertising on the interstate, so that way people will see it as well. So we are trying to get it signed as as well as possible, in addition to doing a substantial amount of social media around the new cell phone waiting area and information sharing at the curb too, as people are circling.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was, all the media. It was from all angles, so I thought you did a really good job on the rollout there. And then can you just speak to, in master plan updates, if it's part of this or if it's happening at the same time, but talking about airport area of influence, the overlay, is that part of the?
The airport influence overlay. We will certainly look at zoning as part of the airport master plan, but the master plan is a pretty lengthy process, so I'm hopeful that we will have information on the airport overlay prior to the master plan. We would like to have something to council much sooner than the master plan. And maybe I should clarify, maybe just for people who are not familiar with the airport influence overlay or airport influence area. We're talking about zoning around the airport and how we are ensuring that the airport is protected from a noise compatibility perspective, but also how we're zoning to allow housing in areas that maybe we can't allow housing and further development. So that it's a zoning
Your comments, Commissioner Vasconcelos.
Well, we took a big trip last month, to, take a river cruise to Normandy in France, and it was, really inspiring to see those beaches, man. Hard to imagine that assault that occurred 80 years ago. It looks like it'd be impossible, but it was quite, looking at the history of the thing was really impressive. We flew to Paris, through Salt Lake on Delta, which is really convenient. We flew back on Air France through Seattle. Wasn't quite as good, but everything went pretty smoothly, so it was a big trip. Thank you.
And then will you each address the January if you're okay with that? Being canceled?
Yeah, I'd be okay with canceling the January meeting in light of what Director Hubb said. If she felt a need for it, then I think we should have one, but. And I would add that in the past, Russ would probably attest to the fact that we've done this several times in the past.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you have any comments?
Oh, not really. I like Bill, I haven't been anywhere nationally and internationally, but one thing of interest I did find since our last committee meeting, I went over to a sister airport in Nampa to look at an airplane. I was thinking of investing in, and I hadn't been there for a couple of years, and I couldn't believe the growth that's gone on there. I can tell you that general aviation is growing and very healthy in this valley, and the number of new hangars that have been built over there with private equity was amazing. And so I can't but help our facility here, because sooner or later they're gonna want the coverage and the protection of ACT's air traffic control. I just thought it interesting. There's a lot of growth and investment over there by general aviation.
Any opinion on January?
I'm with you. I just soon skip it.
Thank you. Commissioner Donald.
Madam Chair, thank you. Missed the last couple of meetings, so it's always good to see everyone. I appreciate your patience with that. It's been interesting, the new job, and the balance there, but it's good. Traveling a lot, but everywhere I go, I know I say this at every commission meeting, but I'm always thankful for what all of you do. Boise is always a good place to come home to. So it's always easy to get in and get out of. So no matter where I go, whether it's here in the United States or international, it's always good to be back. So thanks for everything that you do. And I am good with no meeting in January. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have no further comments and I too will support Rebecca's recommendation to cancel the January 1st meeting.
Madam Chair, congratulations to the promoted employees. I think it's always great when you have the opportunity to promote from within. So I'd like to acknowledge John and Mark with a C. My brother-in-law's name is Mark with a C. And also to Paradise, because they've been a partner of ours for a very long time. So it's wonderful to see them being recognized. My trip in October through the entrepreneurs organization that I serve on was to Bahrain. So Bahrain is in the Middle East. It is in the Persian Gulf. It's east of Saudi Arabia. And it's a beautiful little country, about 1.5 million people, very hospitable, multiple language speaking, beautiful weather, 92 degrees, swim in the sea. I mean, who wouldn't want that? But it was lovely. And it takes a long time to get there, as you might imagine, like 25 hours. Even going Boise, Chicago, Frankfurt to Bahrain. But uneventful, flights on time, really a very smooth trip. And when you make that many connections, especially going through busy airports like O'Hare, you never know. So it was a nice opportunity to not have a lot of doubt. I'm always happy to come home. It just feels so welcoming. And it's kind of like getting a warm hug when you come back. So appreciate that very much.
And I wanted to, before we move on, I just wanted to congratulate Commissioner Carlson for getting Woman of the Year for multiple times.
No, thank you.
Recently read that story and we got to bring that up. So great.
Madam Chair, I think my comments, I just want to thank everyone that was part of the annual meeting for the Northwest Chapter of American Association of Airport Executives, if I got that right. That was a pleasure to be part of briefly last month, and oh, it's right there on the slides.
I noticed that.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't see that slide. Maybe I was sleeping at that point in the meeting, but it was a great opportunity to chat and mingle with people from all over the Northwest, and they just had really great things to say about Boise, about their time at this conference. And I know that Director Hupp and a lot of your teams played a really important role in this, and the opportunities that come from this to be able to network and learn from each other and share from each other. So thanks for being part of that and all you do in your daily roles. Thanks.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank, I know it takes a lot of people to put an event like that on, and we always appreciate hosting industry events that are so significant. So thank you for that. And also want to congratulate you on the grant. That's huge news. And I know that also takes a lot of work. I just got back from New York City, had a media mission there, met with 19 different journalists. It was very successful. You could tell we're a little bit of a media darling lately with the travel and leisure, best in the world. Boise made the list, one of 3 destinations in the US. I think some of that, along with the Wall Street Journal article of best kept secret in the Pacific Northwest, recently coming out. Hopefully that will also impact your numbers moving forward in 2025. So with that, did you want to say anything else?
I do. And apologies, I don't know how I skipped over this very important slide in my presentation. Obviously, an early morning for me, but I do want to give a shout out to our team. We did host the Northwest chapter of the American Association of Airport Executives meeting here in Boise. It was their largest conference ever by far. Their previous record number of attendees had been 250. We had about 350 all-time record for sponsorship. And it was a great opportunity for a number of our airport employees to present and speak as industry experts, specifically Marcus Green, who often talks to you about construction, but Colton, who spoke about our safety management systems, Amy Snyder, who shared her best practices about the concessions proposal process. Jen Moore talked about the terminal project, and Brett and Renee both shared their expertise related to the consolidated rental car facility. And Brett talked about our transition to the electric boiler. And I want to give a shout out as well to Jennifer and Shauna for and to Jill for helping to organize a number of the events and the format, but also Jennifer and Shauna, they helped put together the swag bags of giveaways, of which you have the socks and the popcorn in front of you. So it was a very well attended event. I think people loved Boise and the content was exceptional. The team did a really great job, and thank you for allowing me to brag about them a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It says popping over to Idaho, so very clever.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bosinger, do you have some comments?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello from Seattle. I apologize for not being there in person. We had our early morning flight over to Renton, where I'm spending the day. It's beautifully sunny here. I think that's the last of the sunny days for a while, but I wanted to just acknowledge Marcus and Alex and the FAA pilot outreach event that was that the ITD hosted. I was there along with over 200 pilots from the Boise area. So it's a pretty unique event. I don't think ATC does a lot of these events where they talk with the pilots from the area and gives some context, and hopefully we can continue to work together. But Marcus did a good job talking and explaining the growth that's happening at the Boise airport, and it was a really good, well-attended event. And I think we're lucky to have the tower management and leadership that we have there willing to work and educate the GA pilots as well. So hope to be that. I'm happy to not do the January meeting. I'll do whatever the consensus is for the rest of the commission, and I look forward to being there in person in December.
Thank you. Did we need to do an official vote for that, the January meeting, or not having it? We're good. Okay. All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to airport staff report. We have a gate utilization study update. Will Jensen Rotundo?
All right, well, it seems that our consultant who is going to present maybe is having technical difficulty and is not online. So let me see if I can stop sharing and no. So I will go ahead and run through this presentation with you, and I'll give you a little background. So as we are moving forward through a couple of different projects here, specifically as we're beginning the design of Concourse A, and we're trying to determine what the right number of gates are and how big they are, we recognize that process is at least probably 4 to 5 years away, because the consolidated rental car facility is a 2-year project, and we can't start the new concourse until that is complete. So then you add in construction for that, we're probably looking at about at least 4 years away. So one of the things that we're doing as an interim step is we're conducting what's called a gate utilization study, meaning we're looking at how often the jet bridges that we have here and the ground loading positions that we have here, how often are they being used? This drives 2 things. 1, information about the demand for new gates, and 2, just tells us what the utilization rate is on the existing gates, which we think is leading us to the conclusion that we need to implement what we're referring to is common use. And common use technology allows multiple airlines to use the same aircraft parking gate. You can also use it at the ticket counter, so multiple airlines can use the same ticket counter. And so we think it's a way for us to increase our flexibility and improve our resiliency. That said, that's our sense. Oh. We're looking at how do we optimize our existing gates. We also want to look at what happens if we do not build a new concourse. How would that impact the average number of turns per gate? Look at the gate usage on concourses B and C, and look at the current gate allocation, as well as developing future high-level gate schedules for a 5 and 10-year forecast. So looking at both the existing gates and what that would look like with a new Concourse A. So when we look at the existing gates, these are the departing flights based on 2023. And then what the consultant did was rank ordered them. So this is not a calendar view, but this is the rank order for number of flights on a day. So on the peak day, which happened to be in 2023, happened to be November 26th. The 90th percentage day happens to be 79 departures. So, you know, it's the old adage of you don't build the church for Easter Sunday. You build it based on what you think your average peak day is, or your average day, not your peak day. I don't know why that keeps happening there. So the next thing that we're looking at here is the existing gate usage based on the planning day, which is the 79 departing flights, taking into account the peak day and then the average day. So we don't take the average, but we do take slightly higher than the average. And you can see in this chart, arrivals, departures, and then total flights. And then we look at this as how it impacts our concourse. So on concourse 3, we have 13 positions, but only 11 loading bridges. And that's because there are times, particularly first thing in the morning, where there's 2 aircraft parking positions and 1 jet bridge serves both positions. So basically both aircraft are parked there and we move the jet bridge. And then concourse 11, we have ground loading and we have 2 jet bridges there. So one of the first things we have to do is look at how the gates can be used, because the gates, for example, on the north side, if you've ever flown out of Boise, when you fly out, if you've paid attention, for example, those gates are restricted to smaller aircraft because of the airport roadway. And then we look at the operations forecast, the flight schedule, and then we assess how we're using these for what we call RONs, or remain overnight. And then we also look at how utilization of the SkyWest hangar and the transport of aircraft and aircraft over to the hangar is impacted, as well as other parking places overnight. So some of the things that we assumed is that there would be 30 minutes between each of the aircraft, and that depending on the aircraft size, we designated a amount of time for each aircraft to be at the gate, because it takes longer for a wide body, for example, to enplane and deplane than it does for an RJ. So we looked at a number of those different factors and assumptions. This is what it looks like. It's a little bit of an eye chart, but it shows each of the gate positions and how those gates are being utilized. I'm not going to try and play the video. I don't think it's super informative anyway. I mean, it is gee whiz, but basically what you see is that we are very much an origin and destination airport, meaning most of our flights come in late at night and then leave early in the morning. And so we do have a lull, say around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, because most of the flights have departed for the day and the next round has not arrived in. And so then we have a little bit of a peak later, and then we repeat the process again in the evening. So this is a chart that shows the gate utilization on Concourse B by airline. And you can see, again, very much the beginning and end of the day, they're very full. The lull around 8 a.m. And then aircraft coming and going. It also shows where multiple carriers are using the same gate, which will be helpful when we go to the common use system that we will be proposing, and I'm sure talking about in greater detail. And then this is Concourse C, so predominantly Alaska. And then this is the remote and SkyWest hangar parking, so shows aircraft that we do not accommodate at the gate overnight. So this is just showing the number of aircraft on the ground today. In the morning, there's 25 aircraft that are on the ground parked overnight. They all leave. And then again, you see arrivals and departures midday and then departing. And then this is the gate usage by gate and airline. You can just see the one that is most heavily used is B-15. That is Southwest. Alaska is heavily using C2. Delta is primarily B10, 22. So just a mix. So basically, when you take all of this data, it's showing that overall we have 3.4 turns per gate and 3.7 on Concourse B. Overall, 3.4 is the average for comparison airports. So we're right in line with what's average today for airports of our size. Comparable airports, the ones that we compare ourselves to, are range between 2.5 and 3.9. So we're a little bit higher than the average turns per gate. And then we start talking about future usage. Forecasting, we're looking at both a 5 and 10-year forecast based on air service announcements, expected fleet changes. The forecast, we considered what is called the terminal area forecast that FAA projects, as well as a forecast that we had our air service consultant project. So we're looking at in 2896 departures per day, which is an increase from obviously where we were. I won't bore you with the details for how we allocated those between airlines, but we based it on previous flight schedules and anticipated future flight schedules. This is the same graph that we saw earlier that shows, again, how it is the same thing, arrivals and departures, based on the future forecast. And then this is the gate requirement, again, based on the future forecast. And you can see the number of gates in use compared to the aircraft on the ground in the future forecast. In about 5 years, we expect that we would have 30 aircraft on the ground in the morning starting. Again, a lull and then a busier period midday, followed by a arrival uptick at the end of the day. So based on the 5-year forecast, which is relatively conservative, what we're seeing is the gate usage increases to 4.2 from 3.4, indicating that, a definite need for an expansion in the number of gates. One of the other things that we looked at is not only the gates, but the number of seats on the aircraft, because that will drive the number of passengers that are in the terminal and concourse at any one point in time. And so Concourse B, we would have about at least 1,200 passengers in that concourse at that time. So moving on from that, looking at a 10-year forecast, again, I won't bore you with all the details, but the 10-year forecast is we're looking at 110 departures a day on our planning day, based on a variety of things. Same graph showing, arrivals and departures, a even higher number of aircraft on the ground in the morning, same arrival and departure pattern. And this is where we start to break it down into what it looks like with 110, just the different scenarios. If we don't build Concourse A, then what it would look like if we built Concourse A with 10 gates. Again, adding gates brings down the number of turns per gate. These are several different scenarios. One is if we don't build, and obviously if we do build, that keeps our gate utilization about where it is today. What would happen and how our gate usage would be impacted if we did not use Concourse C, if we opted not to do that. And then we have a scenario here where we are limiting gate usage on B, recognizing that at some point we're going to have to remodel B, which means we'll probably have to close some of the gates. So envisioning that we would build Concourse A, but then close sections of Concourse B to remodel that. So again, this is a planning document. You know, when we forecast things, one thing that we know about forecasts is they're pretty much not going to be 100% accurate. But this is what we think is the most likely scenario based on the data that we have. And we're using this to inform decisions about common use technology, but also future scoping for Concourse A. And so I think what the summary of all of that is, and it is very technical, and I did go through it very quickly, so I'd be happy to go through it in more detail with you if you would like me to, individually. But I think the final outcome is that if we don't build Concourse A, we will be constrained because of our capacity. I think what is really telling to me in this presentation is when we're talking about the forecast for 5 years, that's really where we will be the day that the concourse opens. So when they're not talking about today's passenger levels and today's passenger volumes, we're talking about trying to be ready for where we're going to be in 5 years. So that first 5-year forecast is sort of the day one forecast for future development. And adding Concourse A will allow some flexibility because we do know that we need to make some changes and modifications. The Concourse B, many of you mentioned travel. And if you are going through Concourse B at a peak time, you know how busy it is. We're adding 1 million more passengers through this terminal than we had in the last decade. And we haven't added any restrooms. We're getting ready to add some more concessions. The gate sizes haven't changed, a number of different things. So anyway, this is a planning document that we wanted to share with you that included some forecasts and sort of just a first review as we think about planning for Concourse A and what the size and scope of that may be.
Any questions for Director?
Madam Chair, what's the objection to common use technology from the area?
The objection, there's two really. The first is cost, because they don't want to have to pay for additional equipment that someone else could possibly use. And then the second is that some of the common use technology, depending on what you implement, doesn't provide all of the data and information that they can provide in their native systems. So the perfect example for that is if you've ever been waiting for an upgrade or you've been waiting for a seat assignment, if you've been to an airport where they have the screens that say you've been upgraded or you're waiting for an upgrade. So sometimes in common use, depending on the type of common use that you implement, they might not have that functionality for some of those airline specific things. But I think the big resistance is cost that we're hearing from the airlines.
And Madam Chair, as a follow-up, are there other airports, medium hub, that are actively implementing common
There are
use?
a number of airports that not only are actively implementing it, but have already implemented it. And what's happening is we do have gates that are common use. So meaning more than one carrier can use it today, but they all have their own equipment. And so let's say we have a gate that American uses sometimes and Delta uses sometimes, and I'm just picking random names, but carrier A has a mechanical issue and they're delayed on that gate. And so the airline that's scheduled to go there has to go someplace else. If they don't have the right equipment at that other gate, and all of our gates are pretty full, as you can see, then they can't actually use that gate and there's a delay. And so it adds resiliency, redundancy, and it gives us flexibility as we're looking at expanding. And having really more demand than we have gates, because that's the situation that we're at today.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Rebecca, if we do the terminal expansion, would common use gates technology be across all of the terminals or just the new one? Or is it an all or nothing thing, or just, do we have a chance to just do one?
So we have an opportunity to make that decision. That will be a decision that will come as we refine the forecast. And we have a more detailed forecast coming. Right now, our plan is that, what our thought is that we will do 3 gates that have, Alex is giving me a signal there, how many gates are we doing, Alex? 6. 6 gates, okay, that are currently common use, so we would implement that technology at those 6 gates as a pilot to see how it goes, and as we do the concourse expansion, we can make decisions about, do we want to have all of the gates on concourse A be common use? Do we want to have it be airline specific? I suspect, because it will be investing new money, that we will want to make it common use, but that decision has not been made yet. There may be things that we're not thinking about today that we may want to consider as we get further in the design process.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. Appreciate you presenting and
I was
handling
just saying,
all the tech.
It's really pretty technical, so I appreciate you saying it's interesting. I don't know that anybody really cares except for us airport wonks who are trying to figure out what's happening in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so now's the time for the general public. If there's any questions or comments for the commission and the airport staff, discussion per issue not to exceed 5 minutes, and the meeting time constraints or requests for final action may require deferral for a future meeting. Is there any that would like to address the commission? Yes.
Hi, I'm Tim Vanell. I'm the Director of Operations for Genmair, which is a lease holder of a gate downstairs. Not a true gate, but a gate, outside gate. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the backcountry things. But first and foremost, I'm pretty disappointed that I'm not gonna get to introduce our family's tradition of black eyed peas on New Year's Day with you guys. Cause you canceled that meeting, but I don't know if you ever eat black eyed peas, but mom makes us eat them every New Year's. Something about luck. It's never really worked for me. If I'm not eating enough of them, I don't have any idea. But anyway, this is just a couple of the comments. Most of these things are these are actually out of the master plan. I don't know. Jamie, I have one for you here. They're just some things out of the master plan that address as she was talking about from the backcountry operator side of things. It's interesting in the numbers. Better get my timer out. What did I do with that phone here so that I can stick to the 5 minutes? I stay and live and work in Salmon. I used to be down here in the valley. Somewhere there's a timer on here, but I got you. Good. I live and work, used to work at MAF in Nampa. We were 22 years overseas flying in Africa. I'm a pilot mechanic, but then moved up to Salmon in March of 2021 during the COVID era. And if they counted our gate operations here at the Boise airport, we would actually increase your departures by almost 10% in the summer months from our aircraft usage. There's an interesting part of Idaho that many of you may have experienced, the backcountry. Our company has been doing it for 42 or 43 years. It used to be called Salmon Air. 2009, they kind of tried to retire and that didn't work so well. But they had sold the name, so they came back with a different name called Genmair in 2014. And finally, the parents are about to retire, but same families own the business for 42 years. They've been operating here a long time. The certificate has been in operations in Idaho since 1950, I believe, total. So they've got a lot of history in Idaho. And they've rented a space in the Boise airport for decades, carrying people from here out to the backcountry. It's one of the most unique places. I think there's only Alaska and Idaho that do that. the benefit of coming into a main airport and then flying directly out to a backcountry airstrip. So it's unique in the sense of Idaho. And, as you'll see on your paperwork there, the master plan of 2010 and then 2020, this is I got this drawing here on the first page from the, I think the July meeting that the presentation was done here about what the Concourse A might look like. And I don't know if it's proposed or what, but it was in the presentation. And then the second page is actually the concept 2 that is in the master plan of 2020. And as you'll see on the first drawing, sorry to make you go back and forth, on the first drawing, the little red square that's kind of down at the bottom of the drawing, rectangle, is where the backcountry apron currently sits that we use. We're us backcountry operators, that little red rectangle on the first page, that's kind of over that green pond down at the bottom of the drawing. And then on the second one, this is the concept 2 that's in the master plan. The yellow rectangle that's up kind of towards the top, that is the proposed backcountry apron that was in concept 2 of the master plan. Somehow we got concerned that it's not in this drawing here that was presented in July, and are still wanting to keep it first and foremost before everyone, that it's very utilized. In the master plan, it talked about for the backcountry on the next page, these are all excerpts right out of the master plan on the paragraph. The master plan states that in the backcountry section, as part of the leasees of the airport and operators, it says, however, after this, where the facilities are being taken down, it says, however, a site should be selected to accommodate backcountry operations if existing facilities are to be displaced by future airport developments. We just kind of, I came into this new, if this was told to Gem Air earlier than 2022, that's when I got wind of it and started trying to pick the battle of saying, hey, it's important for Idaho. It's important for the outfitters of the backcountry. And for the economy of what the Idaho Outfitters and Guides do, which is the second largest economy in Idaho, to have that benefit. And then in the initial concepts, the 5.2.1 says finally a concept involves the relocation of existing backcountry operations, or then the concept should provide a suitable relocation site. These are right out of the master plan. And I just wanted to bring a few points to fruition here about the operations. We've been 2 years ago, we sat with the airport administration and had a discussion on it when we found out that this was gonna kind of go away. And we're hoping that the airport was gonna find a suitable place for us. And right now, currently, the suitable location is, we're hopeful that Jeff at Jackson Jet is gonna accommodate our 3,200 bodies in a 4-month period of time with all of our aircraft. That's a whole lot of traffic for an FBO to absorb during that time. And we're terminal type people. People fly in at 9 o'clock in the morning. They don't fly out till 2 in the afternoon. So they're hanging out in an airport. And so anyway, with those challenges, I walked to Jackson Jet this morning. There's no sidewalks that go over there from the airport. You walk down a tight corridor through the rental construction and then down a road that has no sidewalks. And so there's some safety concerns on how are our passengers gonna traverse over to Jackson Jet this summer. So.
Need to wrap this
Cool.
up.
No, those are, the safety concerns, the volume in the Jackson Jet, and the planning committee, instead of saying that a business determination of ours should be made to handle our business operations out of Boise, we're asking why the airport, hasn't chosen a suitable site. And to accommodate us. Big question is, why is it not in the new drawing? The backcountry apron, so.
Thank you for bringing that up to our attention. Do you want to defer to Rebecca Huff as far as next steps?
So this is something where we've had ongoing conversations with the backcountry operators. There's the temporary location, and I think the conversation that we've had is there are options, particularly Jackson Jet Center is adjacent to the airport. We've talked to them about a shuttle going back as far as pre-pandemic. So this is not a new development. The drawing that is in the master plan is a concept. As well as the drawing that was presented to you last month is also a concept. We do not have a final design for the concourse. I appreciate that there's, 4,000 passengers who go through backcountry. We're trying to balance the need for that along with the need for growth. We have many days where we have more than 9,000 passengers a day go through our checkpoint. So we are balancing these competing needs. There's only a limited amount of space at the terminal and adjacent to the terminal. This will be something that will be looked at as part of the next master plan, but we are moving forward with construction this winter and spring. And we've given them ample notice that we will not be able to use gate 58 this year because of construction and the demolition of the old fire station and the construction of the aircraft parking apron, because again, we need more aircraft parking spaces for overnight parking, again, because of the demand that we're seeing for passenger growth. So we're trying to balance all of these things. None of these drawings are final. They are concept drawings that depict what could be. And we will continue to have communications with the backcountry operators, as well as other stakeholders, including the airport commission, and keeping you advised so you can weigh in on all of these various competing interests.
Any other one that would like to address the commission?
Madam Chair, Commissioners General, my name is Jeff with Jackson Jet Center, and again, I'm very pro-growth. I'm happy to do whatever I can to accommodate either temporary or a longer-term solution. It is certainly not off the table. I will comment, the one thing I will say is I sometimes, and maybe this is part of the confusion, is sometimes I know I feel a little left out of the conversation of what may or may not be happening. And I would hope and suggest that I'd like to be more engaged in part of that. How I do that, I don't know. But I think I'd rather be proactive and then rather than reactive on what's happening or what some of the options are being considered. So that brings me my only feedback. Other than that, like I say, very pro-growth, happy to do what we can in any way possible that's reasonable. So thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no hands, it is the time in our agenda to move into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206 subsection F that the commission resolve into executive session for the purpose of communicating with legal counsel to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated. I ask that a roll call vote be made.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Alice, please call roll.
Commissioner Bozinger,
Here.
Commissioner Carlson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cunningham. Aye. Donovan,
All right.
Commissioner Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Vasconcellos,
Aye.
Commissioner Westerberg,
Aye.
Chairman Westergaard.
Hi. Okay, so now it's time to ask members of the public and team members to exit, and then also we need to turn on the IT except for JD, Commissioner Bozinger. Thank you, everyone, for attending.